Yep, cool. Hey, morning everyone. Quite the turnout. Cool. How many people know about this small little company called Veeam? Ah, good stuff. Cool. So a big ethos around Veeam has always been about the community edition, free edition, about be us as technologists, which I imagine all of us are. We all like tinkering at home, maybe a home lab. Maybe our home labs are now in the public cloud and we're playing around with like learning and we're getting to grips with other areas and services. Veeam's ethos is always pretty much, there's always going to be a free version of everything that we do, and it's going to be free forever, and generally it's going to be fully functional, and it's going to have a cap, a limit of what you can protect in terms of how many VMs, how many cloud machines. So I really wanted, this is kind of a bit of a repeat of a session that I actually did in 2019 here, but over those 2 years where we were all sat at home, our engineering team have been quite busy with other products. So before I kick off, I'm Michael Cade. I sit within our product strategy group, reporting into our CTO. And actually over the last 18 months, I've been focused on our cloud native technology. So we acquired a company called Kasten, which focuses on Kubernetes backup. So I am going to mention that because I imagine that there's been a lot of talk about Kubernetes developers that we've seen all through the week so far. But I also want to touch on the other areas that we've got and kind of give a bit of an update of what do we have that is free and open and available to our community as users. If there are any questions, either at the end here, but you can always find me on social media, email address, always willing to listen to the feedback. That's what helps us get better features and functionality into our products. So we have a history of free. Who remembers fast SCP? Okay, not so many numbers, but that was basically our first endeavor to start looking at how do we get data from A to B, and then that evolved into Veeam Backup Replication, but it was really just a copy and paste out of a VMware data store to get a copy of that VMX file, VMDKs, etc. Right, and then that's evolved over the years to be what it is today. Also, we had another product called Veeam Monitor, which actually was the first free product that we had, which gave you insights into your infrastructure, your VMware infrastructure. Anyway, that's enough about the history. Right. So over the last few years, we've definitely broadened our platform, our portfolio of products. Obviously, still very much our core product is Veeam Backup Replication that is there to protect virtual machines, but we've added the ability to protect physical workloads, virtualization, other virtualization platforms, public cloud, SaaS-based offerings, unstructured data. Like you can see it all on there with a bit more of the application focus as well. So I'm going to get into some of these areas that we've got, just so that you guys that everyone is aware of that as we walk through. And quite a hat tip to Veeam and going back to that ethos is that you can see that we have quite a lot of free stuff going on. And this is not necessarily including absolutely everything, but these are probably the big ticket items when it comes to the community edition and the free edition that we have in there. So all of these are completely available as a community edition, and I'll dive into a little bit more detail about each one. Now, a few months ago, I was asking, what does a community edition mean to you as infrastructure admins, hobbyists, technologists out there in the field? And you can see that we got a mixed reaction. These are just some of the reactions that I got from the tweet. Normally, it just means that it's free and it's limited either by features or capacity or licensing. It's free and it's got maybe only community support. Maybe it's just a Slack or email support, best effort type thing. And you can see these people I interact with quite regularly come from all different areas of infrastructure administration, cloud engineers, and so they're obviously using other tools. Right? Not everyone is only using Veeam. That would be silly to think that. But I think it's important that from our ethos, again, is about being fully functional so that you can use the product. You can actually take advantage of it, and we're not closing doors and we're not a licensed company in that respect. Okay, so what does free mean? Free like a puppy? No, actually, it is actually free, but it's limiting or when do you choose the limiting by licensing versus features? So we've made a conscious decision 15 years ago with Veeam is that we will do it via a licensing model, a free, supported by best effort forums, etc. But we want that high quality of a product, the same product that our enterprise customers are using to give us the functionality in our home labs, in our cloud environments, in our Office 365 SaaS-based like demo environments as well, and started around that 2006 mark. So I'll talk about Veeam Backup Replication first, and then we'll get down into some of the other areas. But if we think about Veeam Backup Replication being our central hub, our management console that first began life of being able to protect those VMware virtual machines, and it's now evolved into that platform area where we can protect physical and cloud-based workloads, and actually coming next is the ability to protect Cast and K10 or Kubernetes applications as well. So the first tick point, and there should be an asterisk there with that 10 workloads. So think about 10 workloads, and you can choose however you use that. So whether it's a bit of NAS data, whether it's 5 virtual machines, 2 cloud VMs in Amazon, you can pick and choose how these instances are protected, but you can use the Community Edition to make that happen. We don't lock away any of the features, or you might just have 10 virtual machines. Now I've got the asterisk is the last slide in the deck, whereas from a community point of view, if you're part of a community group, be experts or others that are out there, then we can up that to 20 instances. So again, it goes down to that. We want everyone to actually think about protecting the data in their labs versus not protecting, right? So that's a big part of that. So from a VBR point of view, Veeam Backup Replication, what can we do? Instantly recover virtual machines or instantly recover 2 virtual machines. So if you're protecting your laptop or a physical desktop machine using VBR, we have the ability, even with the free edition, to instantly recover that to a VMware ESXi host. So automate that conversion from physical, that bare metal, and push it into a virtual machine. We've also got the ability to directly restore that into AWS, into Azure, into Google. Again, all functionality available in there. We've also got the ability to have, I don't know how many serious home labbers we've got, where you've got 2 sites within your environment. We can replicate those virtual machines between the 2. Now, we don't take an instance away from that either. So you can replicate VM1 and back VM1 up, and you can replicate that to the other. That is still just one instance that we're looking after. And then that instant recover, like actually being able to, within seconds, bring that physical machine or that virtual machine back within seconds. We've also got that ability to send it and convert that into EC2 functionality. Obviously, from a VBR point of view, it gives us that central management. What it also gives in the free edition is the ability to leverage something called Veeam Data Labs and Secure Restore. So if you're restoring a backup from maybe 2 months ago, maybe it's you refreshing your lab and you're leveraging Veeam to bring it back to the point that it once was all good before you broke it all. We have something called Secure Restore, which will hook into your Windows Defender, it will hook into ESET, it will hook into an antivirus program, and then scan that backup for any vulnerabilities that you might find in there. So you're not restoring bad stuff. So we include that in there as well, because again, it's mindful that we want to be able to look after you all, and be able to restore good data. And what we'll do there is that it's not a closed door. If we find something, we give you the option to choose what you want to do. We'll give you visibility of that, so you can say, oh, okay, there's a file there that looks a bit dodgy. Maybe you exclude that from the restore, carry on. Or maybe you just want to knock the network adapters off so you can dive into the console and you can go and remediate yourself. So all of that's included into the Veeam Backup and replication. Also, everything that we do from a change block tracking, efficiencies when we're taking a backup, like we take a first full backup in all of our products, we have to take a first full backup. We're not magicians just yet, we have to still take that. But then thereafter, we take these incremental backups, which enable us to take really, really fast incrementals. Like, we don't change what that looks like in the free or the community edition. It's still the same process. Like, it'd actually be more work for us to put a lesser data engine, data mover into the product. So you get the same data mover, change block tracking, compression algorithms that we use in the enterprise product as well. So just a couple of, well, what can it do and what it can't do? So I kind of touched on what can it do from a Veeam Backup Replication. We protect VMware virtual machines, good stuff. We protect NAS backup. We can replicate those virtual machines. We provide that instant VM recovery. And then we also have our Veeam Explorers. So if you're backing up Active Directory in your home lab or in a test environment, or you've got Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, Postgres in the next version, what these explorers allow us to do is dive into the backup, but in particular the database, and pull out individual items. So we have that functionality as well, all included in that. What can't it do today? Continuous data protection, so using VAIO, the IO filter within vSphere, we can't do that. I don't know how many people require that in your home lab. But, and then Veeam Data Labs, I mentioned Secure Restore, but Veeam Data Labs gives us the ability to take those backups and spin them up in an isolated environment so you can run tests against them, clone them, get insight out of that data. That's also not included in the free and community edition. But if that's something that is like, that would be great feedback for us to see, because I'm a massive fan of that Data Labs and the leveraging of data. Like, is that a use case that we want to do in our home labs? And then things like, which are, again, feedback on this, APIs, self-service tools, the enterprise management. We have another enterprise portal, enterprise manager, that allows us to segregate and group maybe various different vCenters, virtual Veeam Backup and Replication servers into one interface. Again, that's not included, but again, especially from the API's point of view, give us that feedback if we need that. Okay, then from a monitoring point of view, we also have Veeam One and we have Veeam Management Pack, but Veeam One's probably the more, not everyone's running SCOM in there or some sort of operations manager in their home lab or in their test environment. So Veeam One's probably the better option, especially from a home lab. But what Veeam One gives us is the ability to have visibility over our infrastructure. So our vSphere infrastructures, our agents for both Windows and Linux, as well as the NAS backup. Just some way of understanding, not necessarily the backups, yeah, we'll do that, Veeam One does that, but also let me know if there's something bad happens, like let me know if there's an abnormal change of data. Let me know if there's a high CPU or a high memory usage on one of our virtual machines, because even in our home lab, ransomware is probably still a threat. So it gives you a little bit more visibility, and that still has that 10 workload limit on there as well. Again, there should be an asterisk at the end, I'll share that. Now, what about if I don't want to have Veeam Backup and Replication, and maybe I've just got a Windows laptop, Linux server that I just want to protect in a very efficient way instead of using native tools. So we've got the ability not only to do that through Veeam Backup and Replication, but you can download the agents and manage those independently. So if you've just got one Windows laptop, we can still use the free edition to send that backup off to either a USB hard drive, off to I think OneDrive was actually removed, but there's various options as where you can store your backups locally. And then if you are using Veeam Backup and Replication, then you have that centralized console. It also allows you to use that to instantly recover. I explained that. Application and aware backup. So if you are running a physical SQL box, for example, we've got the ability to coerce that workload and make sure that it's consistent. Another area is we can still use the free edition to use backup as a service for any of our service providers offering Veeam Backup as a service. So you not only could you send a backup to a local USB drive, a local NAS, you can also send it off to a service provider, as in you can now get an off-site copy. Interesting enough, and I'm not sure whether it lands in the free edition of the agent, but when V12 comes, we have object storage and direct to object storage. So it'd be an interesting question I've just thought of whilst being on stage, so I'll go back and ask that. Same for cloud. Like, a lot of us are probably dabbling in using like EC2 instances, getting to grips with AWS, Azure, and Google. So we have products for those areas as well that can be centrally managed through VBR, but also independently. So we also offer that 10 instances free there as well. So you can protect that as you're playing around maybe in a lab environment up in AWS or elsewhere. You can still protect that, as well as like, so EC2 I've mentioned quite a few times, but think about like relational databases as well, Postgres, MySQL in there, EFS, virtual private VPC configurations, etc. If you're anything like me, when you're playing around and learning the AWS or the public cloud, you're probably breaking stuff quite frequently. So to have something to recover to or from, it's an important part of that. And you still get the application aware, and you get the portability of that as well. So any backups that we take, whether it's physical, virtual, cloud, and we've got the ability to restore that into any of the other locations as well. So we can bring a physical into virtual, physical into the public cloud into virtualization, into VMware. There's a lot of portability options there because we use the same backup file format in each one. Okay, check time, because I want to get to the demo as well. And then finally, before we move on to like my focus over the last, and probably the newest free edition, is also think about like SaaS. If we're running Microsoft 365, maybe you're running a personal Office 365 subscription, we've got the ability to protect that as well. Most families probably don't have more than 10 users, but it gives you the ability to protect 10 users from a mail point of view, but also that'll allow you to protect SharePoint. I don't know many that are running SharePoint for like a home lab and home uses, but also OneDrive. So if you're running OneDrive for business, not OneDrive personal, then you've got the ability to protect them as well. And that's 10 users. So if you've got 10 users that are using Exchange or using OneDrive for business, that's one user that uses Exchange and OneDrive. We're not taking 2 licenses for that same one user. So hopefully that makes sense. We've also got there's a community edition coming out for Salesforce as well, which will give you the ability to do some functionality there as well. So that's another new product that's coming out later. Okay. And then this brings us on to an acquisition that we made in October 2020 that was focused on Kubernetes backup. They're very much the same or similar ethos to us from a Veeam perspective, software defined, not tied into any particular hardware or storage or platform or distribution, and they give us that freedom of choice. So this is really focused on protecting those Kubernetes stateful applications or complex stateless applications. How many people are running some sort of Kubernetes cluster at home? Or in production as well, I guess, is another question. But okay, so a few. I strongly believe, and you heard the keynote, there's a big play or big talk track around Tanzu, around Kubernetes. I think Kelsey actually said in one of his sessions that we're all developers. Okay, I'm not sure whether I agree with that, but let's go with it for now. We can all write shell scripts. So from a K10 point of view, we've got you covered as well from up to 5 worker nodes. Worker nodes, think of worker nodes as your ESXi hosts, right? That's where you're going to be running your containers, your pods, and we've got the ability to protect those using the K10 edition of the free edition. Again, full functionality, you've got everything out of the box, and the license actually is out of the box and working. Now, this is, I started a project called Project Pace because I wanted to be able to make it easily available, especially the majority of you didn't put your hand up when you've said about Kubernetes, but then we're being told, you need to know about Kubernetes, and I feel like maybe you're looking at it and going, that's a really steep learning curve, and I don't really want to have to go and do the step-by-step deploying Kubernetes because it's not really in my remit at the moment. So what I wanted to do was take away that complexity and use something called Minikube to begin with to streamline that. How do I get a Kubernetes cluster up and available to me as fast as possible across any operating system? So whether you're running Mac, whether you're running Windows or Linux on your desktop, you've got the ability to use Minikube. It's quite cross-platform. Think of it as like a local Kubernetes cluster for developers, and I'm just leveraging it to allow us to have a platform to start deploying some applications. So what this does is it allows us to deploy a data service. It allows us to deploy casting K10 to protect that data service. So a database in Kubernetes is very similar to what we see as a database in a virtual machine or a cloud machine, we still need to protect that data. There's no magic button in Kubernetes. So everything's available. That QR code will take you here. It gives a few, like, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. And there's a few different areas in there. Basically, that QR code will take you to this. I've done a webinar on it as well, a longer form. So it goes through installing Minikube, deploying a Minikube cluster. It goes through then installing Kasten K10 onto that cluster. Kasten lives within the same Kubernetes cluster. Deploy data services. Spoiler there is that it's Pac-Man, so you can go and have a game of Pac-Man and record a mission critical high score into a Mongo database. And then we've got the ability, like as a stretch goal, to go and deploy MinIO in there as well as a place to store your backups. Now, obviously not best practice because it's all going to be contained on your one machine, but it gives you the ability to at least start getting a bit of a look and feel to what Kubernetes has to offer without really having to know what the underbelly looks like. Because I feel like that, for me at least, was a bit of a that was a steep. It seemed like a steep learning curve at the start, and I think that's a lot of the objection that I see in the field as well. So basically, what the next part of the demo is just really getting started, and how do we do that first part of that? How do we install Minikube? That's quite simple and easy. But then how do we deploy a new Kubernetes cluster? And then how do we deploy Kasten K10? So I have my local laptop, Linux. I actually did this morning, if you noticed the time, because I was a good boy at the Veeam party last night. And then what I do is we're just going to deploy this Kasten K10 deployment, and I'm going to leave it to you as a call to action to go and play with the rest and get a Node.js, which is the Pac-Man, and it's all in the repository. Go and deploy the Mongo database that scores those mission critical high scores, and then MinIO to offset that backup into S3. So first of all, Minikube. So this allows us to run that using, well, in fact, you could run, Minikube can leverage virtual machines as well in vSphere, VMware Workstation as well. So what we're going to do, and I have sped this up quite a bit so that I don't run out of time, but basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Minikube start, and then I'm going to leverage some add-ons. And that's what I really liked about Minikube, is that they have the ability to add in these various different add-ons very easily as part of the deployment. Volume snapshots and CSI host path driver. You don't necessarily need to know about that, the underbelly at this point, but we need it for what we're doing from a custom point of view. How do we take volume snapshots, and how do we leverage something called the container storage interface? So here you go. Don't worry, that's just my editing this morning. But this will take for the first time. So think about this. This is going to use, for this, I'm using Docker on my local Linux box. Don't worry, that first web page that I put through will give you the instructions on how to get through that. And now it's done. I've sped that up, don't worry. But it probably takes 5-10 minutes on that first pull. But then after that, you've got the image, so you can then rinse and repeat that as much as you want. Okay, so we have our cluster deployed. And apologies if I'm going too quick here as well. I know that this will be available afterwards, and that QR code will allow you to walk through and do it for yourself. So here I just started that Kasten K, or I'm going to now go and deploy Kasten K10. So we use something called Helm. Helm is a package manager for Kubernetes. So I have to add in, or I already have, the Kasten Helm chart deployed. So this is how we deploy Kasten K10 and other products in here. You see Bitnami, which is VMware's plethora of applications that you can deploy. And this is a very easy way of saying, this is how I want the application to look, and get it deployed in there. So very simple. We take that string, we then go and get that installed. I'm going to dynamically create the namespace. Now, again, we have to pull down those images, so I'm not going to wait here 15 minutes for all of them to come, and hopefully it will be very quick, and we can get this deployed very quickly. But basically what this now gives, so this is in the background, this is going to go and deploy Kasten K10. It's going to get into the desired state. It's going to pull down all the images. It's going to do everything that it needs to do, and then we're going to expose a web front end. And then we've got the ability to start protecting our Kubernetes applications and workloads. So that gives you kind of an insight into what project pace is. And it kind of, I want to hit the easy button for the VI admin, the infrastructure admin, the systems administrator to get at least hands-on with some sort of application in Kubernetes without potentially all of this dauntingness that potentially looks like a huge steep learning curve, but actually gives you a similar application to what you've probably seen elsewhere in the virtualization world as well. Just conscious of time here as well. But basically, I'm going to go and port forward that or get the token. And this is how you authenticate into the Cast and K10 interface. And then within there, we've got the ability to then go and protect our applications within there. But I don't actually deploy the application in the demo. But let's just quickly get through. And the next slide, I'll talk about it while we're doing this as well. So the idea as well at 5 o'clock this morning was, I wonder if I could show this using the Tanzu Kubernetes, the Tanzu Community Edition. And you absolutely can. They just don't have the add-ons, but you can ultimately. It's just another Kubernetes distribution. So watch that. That repo will have that capability when I get some time between flying around the world. And that doesn't sound as glamorous as it actually is. So this is me just jumping onto the Cast and K10 dashboard that I've port forwarded. Again, just, yep. Let's take that, let's authenticate into it. There's other ways of being able to authenticate in, and again, it's fully functional. So if you've got Okta, you've got single sign-on, you've got AD, etc., we can integrate into that. So give it an email and a company name. Now, out of the box, we automatically use the free edition. So if I get rid of that because I have run out of space on my laptop, if we go down here, you're going to get a best effort support. You can go to Slack, you can go to a forum, and you can get that information. It gives you everything that you would imagine from an enterprise product. If I go into licenses, though, this one here gives you 28,246 days to renew that. But and this will give you up to the five node limit. So we're only using one when we use Minikube. You can expand that out as well. From here, we can create those policies, etc., and that's probably enough to hopefully get you intrigued enough to go and have a look at Project Pace, but then also from a Cast and K10 and start dipping that toe into that Kubernetes world, because I think even just having an awareness of it is going to help us all move forward and have a better understanding of what that looks like. So again, like I mentioned, that big caveat is there's an NFR license as well. If you are part of various different community groups, you've got the ability to up that from 10 to 20. And then finally, just to wrap up, where else can I go to learn more about Kubernetes? Then we have a learning site completely free, not taking any of your information or anything, and that will give you some insight into hands-on labs in Kubernetes without you going breaking things. And then something I spoke about yesterday was like my journey, 90 Days of DevOps, which walks through some of the buzzwords, but actually puts some process principles and tooling around what DevOps is and what it means, and how I think the sysadmin is evolving to have to understand a bit more about automation. With that, thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll be out there. If not, find me on social media and we can have a chat. Cheers.